We're good. Okay, let's just do it then. 9/11 KUM News Decision 2020. It's now time for the after party. We're still waiting. Are we waiting on anybody else?
We're waiting for the shots to come in here.
Right. Let's just pop them on there. We're waiting for Mike Israel, who I really wanted to get on. I think he's probably still drinking his hydroxychloroquine tea.
Eating a nothing burger.
He's eating a nothing burger and washing it down with disinfectants and hydroxychloroquine. And then maybe have sex with demons after.
Oh, my goodness. You really went there.
Yeah, I did. I went all the way there. So let's pop up on our Zoom feed for the after party. We have from the Micronesian Climate Change Alliance, Moneka De Oro. Good morning, Moneka.
Day. Thanks for having me, Chris and Bree.
Really
loving this new format.
Thank you. We're so glad to have you here from the office of Senator Regine Bisco-Lee. But, I'm not saying that's not important that who he works for, but you guys know him. He's a longtime media personality, very opinionated, very knowledgeable. And so we wanted to bring him on to just kind of give his 2 cents. And I hope you give more than 2 cents. Phill Leon Guerrero, good morning.
I think you're going to get your money's worth, Bree and Chris. Thanks so much for having me on.
And then last but not least, of course,
the real money man here.
Yeah, the real money man here, Phill Flores. So, guys, let's just start with Uncle Carl here. We haven't really had a chance to run him as the president of GVB. I guess we'll start there. You guys' thoughts on his appointment there and the work that he's been doing to reopen tourism for Guam. All right, we'll start with ladies first. Moneka.
He did have some interesting points. I really wanted to ask him, is there going to be more of a regional approach and really marketing the entirety of the Marianas to the market? We have so much to share as a whole archipelago instead of just Guam, and I would like to see more of a move of marketing, more cooperation between MVA and GVB. So I didn't get to ask him that, and it's something that I hope in moving forward, both the CNMI and the Mariana and Guam really consider doing more of marketing across our islands. You see it in Hawaii. It's not just visit Oahu, or you see it in the Caribbean. It's more about expanding and sharing what all the other islands have to offer. So I'm hoping that GVB and MVA work more together in the future. But I think he has a very difficult job in pivoting our market. Tourism is definitely our number one economy here. So it's he's coming in at a really difficult time, and I wish him the best.
Phill Leon, if I say Phill, you guys are both gonna look. So Phill Leon Guerrero, just let's if you could address the political side of appointing Uncle Carl over at GVB, because I'm sure the onset of the COVID, a lot of people were clamoring for former Governor Gutierrez to be somehow included in the COVID response, and I feel like they caved to that pressure and put him over at GVB because he was kind of frozen out of this administration, it seems like. Phill.
Well, I do think that if you can take a look at what's going on right now with this pandemic, it's almost like we're going through the longest typhoon response and recovery in our history. That really is the apples to apples comparison about how the government works and the civics of the situation. So I do think that having Governor Gutierrez at the helm at GVB, which really handles and maintains the strength of our strongest economic driver, is it's a good thing. I'm glad to see that he was there. He's there for more than just the initial 90-day appointment, because probably nowhere else in our history besides when our tourism industry started do we have opportunities to really change the paradigm, like Moneka was talking about, trying to market ourselves as an archipelago rather than just a single island. And so I do think it's a big challenge, but just listening to him on the air with you guys and off the air with the three of us, I think what's very clear is that he has the energy to meet this challenge. And I think that really raises the confidence that our public has in how our government is going to do rebuilding our economy.
Right. Well, Phill Flores, you've had a wonderful relationship with Uncle Carl over the last several years.
Wonderful.
I like Carl. And even when we were butting heads, I said, Carl, you can be the nicest person in the world and win so many people over because he has tremendous charisma. Yeah. And I, just as we go forward, maybe Phill could be double L and I could be single L.
Phil Guerrero can be Philly Guagua.
It's really fun because, when Carl was governor, the election in '94, I was party chair for the Republicans, and my job was to bite somebody in the leg. And then he came in and we clashed a little bit, which is just my style, his style sometimes, but over the years it's changed. And I'm really, really glad that the governor allowed him into the inner circle to take us over this crisis, because he was governor, of course, in the half the 90s into the 2000s. I'm trying to think how many typhoons we had at that time, but he was out there recovering, as a double L will say. This is kind of a long typhoon recovery. But I have a mantra that I've been talking to everybody, and one of them is think long term. Don't think next month, don't think next year, think long term. I try to do mine in 10-year increments. And then the other thing is think how worse it could be. And not just for the island, but for you personally. What if tomorrow morning you woke up and the doctor said you have 2 months to live? That's worse than this. And it's even worse, as I said, if your child only has 2 months to live, that's a killer. So again, just think long term, and because it's not as bad as it could be, we can work it, we can fix it.
Single L. I've got to send a clip of this to Uncle Carl, because we are recording, and I'm just Mike Israel kind of felt the same way. It's like a lot of these guys who are on the Republican side of things had their criticisms of Carl while he was governor. I mean, hello, I wrote a few songs about the guy, but at the end of the day, you can't really discount that there's a lot of institutional knowledge there, and it almost seems like using a nuclear missile to kill a housefly to put Carl over at GVB. You know what I mean? It's almost overkill, but you're right, Phill. I think his energy level is pretty surprising for a guy his age. But single L, I wanted to ask you about what Moneka was talking about, because I think it's really cool. I'm a big reunification guy, but when we market regionally, does it take tourism dollars that we could be getting here on Guam and maybe spread them thinner if we're going to try and attract people to come and visit the region instead of just specifically our island?
Whom are you talking?
Single L.
Single
L.
Single L.
Oh. Yeah. Then we're talking about regional tourism.
Right. Just I guess real quick, regional marketing the region as opposed to marketing just Guam. Is that something that we can afford?
I don't think tying to Palau, because it's perhaps too far, and we'd have to change our flights. Going to Palau, I'd go much more often if it wasn't for the times of the arrival and departure. But Moneka has a very good idea, trying to do something with Saipan. I don't know if eventually you could even tie in Tinian. Or even Rota. Rota's a beautiful place that nobody knows about, and they surely could use something for their economy. I mean, there's less than 1,000 people there now. But first off, we have to make our destination good, and at the same time, trust that the CNMI is going to do that for them. And then if that happens, and we can sell as a package, a regional package, then I'm sure Sam and others will be able to boost the number of flights. It's a good idea.
Okay, and let's bring it back to Moneka here. Maybe turn the page from tourism a little bit, and I want to discuss the news coming out of the State Historic Preservation Office late yesterday afternoon. SHPO Patrick Lujan has invoked Stipulation 13. He's calling for a halt to clearing up at one section of the live fire training range. There have been some very significant discoveries made. Moneka, just real quick unpacking this. I know you've got a great activist pedigree. What are your thoughts, and what are some of the people in the activist community saying about Stip 13 being invoked?
I know it's something that we, in groups like Patahila Texan and Finogi Guahan, have been definitely pushing for since the incidents of finding these new burials and these new significant findings, which we knew all along would probably be occurring. We're talking about a pristine forest right above a cliff line, which has some of the oldest sites around the island. So it's not a surprise that these sites have been inadvertently found. And I think it's really to to the credit of these different organizations for putting pressure on the State Historic Preservation Office and putting a 45-day halt to any construction in that area. It really is such a beautiful, sacred site that really needs more time and attention, and really should have more consideration in the ways that we want to develop that area, especially given that it's over a really precious water source for us.
We'll take it over to Double L now. Phill, Leon Guerrero. Phill, your thoughts on this as Mr. Protei Letiza? I'm curious what you think.
Well, I do think that it's credit to obviously the groups and the individuals that have made this an issue since the onset of the buildup. I remember my Mali Moneka, outside constant meetings and presenting, holding my godson, who was just a baby at the time, talking about their concerns. And I do think that a lot of the credit goes to those people that really are showing the stamina to continue to keep an oversight on this. But I also think that, it's credit to people like Patrick Lujan or Shippo, who, people were wondering if he was going to invoke this stipulation. Obviously, he's done it. It obviously has the support of Adelup and the administration. And I also think that part and parcel of this is the oversight that's given by the legislature. There have been several hearings on this. I think Senator Therese Terlaki has been an excellent advocate for this, as well as Senators Perez and Senator Marsh Taitano. So I do think that at this point in time, we can see very clearly that from the community throughout the government, there's time and attention that's being paid to this. And I don't think that's necessarily the message that was being sent in administrations past, if we're going all the way back to the more than 10 years that this buildup has been affecting our island.
Single L, Phill, Flores, just your thoughts on this.
I love nature. Last name Flores, I mean, somebody in my ancestry was growing flowers or something. But we probably have a few dozen buildings around the island, and they're all kept up. We don't let the paint fade. We don't stand for graffiti. We cut the grass. We plant the flowers and the trees. That's because just loving nature. And the same thing goes for historic sites, whether it be behind the fence or in front of the fence. You have to protect them. I wouldn't do anything that I thought was going to kill the military buildup, because I'm all in favor of that. Even the governor said it's kind of our only leg on the stool right now. But at the same time, you have to respect our culture and the artifacts and everything else. I will say that one of our buildings, where many of the remains are right now in Agania, the Angela Forest building, we gave them that space to a repository at $1 a year for 10 years because we knew they needed help, and we volunteered to use our space. We're not going to charge them for it. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, I mentioned outside the fence too. I'd really like it if we respected our island more, that we weren't throwing white trash around, that we weren't leaving a trail of litter to pocket, that if we walk the talk, and instead of saying we've got to take care of our island, that we actually do take care of our island.
Moneka, this is a point that comes up all the time when we discuss, the military buildup and the environment and the impact. Do you think that we need to do more to promote environmental responsibility outside the fence line, concurrently and running parallel to what we're asking from the military? Because the criticism that Phill had brought, you see it all the time on Facebook, where people will say, "Oh yeah, we're complaining about this, but the military's cleaning up after us." So if you could, because I know that this is something you guys hear all the time. So what is your response to these points that people bring up?
I think just looking historically at the impacts of colonization and the disconnection that we've had from all the land grabbings and and then just the changing and the shifting of our lifestyles has made us more disconnected to our land. And it's really important for us to find ways to give reverence back to the sacred spaces in both the air, the water, the land that has allowed us to thrive and survive here for the past thousands of years. And because of so much of our lifestyle changes, we have been really disrespectful to our lands, and the cash economy, consumerism, all of those things are layered as to why we treat our lands the way we do. But it really is unfortunate that the idea of illegal dumpings is a reason that we should even desecrate more lands, especially given in light that the military has a legacy of really toxic contamination, and they still haven't cleaned up the over 99 Superfund sites that have been identified on this island. So to say that the military is doing a good job and that they're good stewards of our environment is really false and really more divisive than anything.
I don't agree. I'm not trying to get an argument because I really don't know you.
No, please do get into an argument.
But I think if you were to drive down Marine Drive, if you were to drive down San Vittori's, if you were to take a walk on Tumon, or go to Governor Joseph Flores Park, there's going to be trash. If you drive onto the military base, there's no trash. I'm not throwing stuff around. Now, there's no doubt that after the war, and probably in the 50s, maybe even the 60s, people were not environmentally aware as they are now. And I'm shocked. I always wonder what's out there at the Paseo, because that's landfill from World War II. And we'll never find out, I guess, what's in Oradot. But I'd have to think now, it's a different age, people think differently, they're more aware. I don't think they're going to be willy-nilly just destroying things as it was done. Remember, it wasn't just the military who was dumping, it was everybody just dumping.
Double L?
But if I could come to some sort of a middle ground here, because I hear this argument quite often, and it takes many forms, and it's levied against many people and many groups and organizations. And it's this notion that if you take a stance, especially a stance that isn't necessarily universally popular, that you are somehow negating your efforts to do something that is interrelated or do something that is on the fringes. You can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think that, Moneka being part of the Micronesian Climate Change Alliance speaks for itself as far as how she feels and what she's doing to protect the environment and to sustain and promote green practices throughout our community. And I think if you take a look at who's a part of groups that take issue with the desecration of our sacred lands or the destruction of our ecosystems that have taken millions of years to form and are going to be lost forever, what you'll see is they are walking and chewing gum at the same time. I even think that you can find it in the government leaders that may be taking these stances. But that doesn't negate the point that Phill is making, which is if we are going to send a strong message to the military that this land is sacred, that their activities are disrespectful to us as a people, we also have to reciprocate that message by holding our people to the same standard. And I do think that there are groups that are doing that, but I also agree with Moneka in that part of our colonial experience with the commodification of our land is this disconnect from that sacred status that many people are trying to remind us of. And if land can be bought and sold and rented, maybe it's not such a big deal that I leave it for someone to pick up my trash, because that's part of the cycle that we're in. So I see the points on both sides,
right.
But I don't think that negates that we can go ahead and take these two different tracks and be successful at both of them.
Right. I think what's cool here is that there's a difference of opinion with Phill supporting the military buildup. And I think that's really a moot point. The military buildup, I mean, it's happening. It's in progress. I think the best thing that we can do now due to our political status is continue to kind of try and push our leaders to call for accountability and transparency in this process that we have no power to really stop. We can pause it a little bit. But what I think is a really great takeaway from this meeting of three different minds is that we can all agree that the discoveries, the significant archaeological discoveries made at the live fire training range are important enough for this group of people with differing opinions to come together and say, yeah, this is something we need to pause, and we need to make sure that whatever's going on there, whatever they have found, that we're doing everything that we can to really make sure that, the process is proper. Let's move on here, guys. We want to talk ballot, the candidates. Bree?
Right. I wanted to talk about the election now and focus in on some of the candidates that are running. And, the primary election, we're just weeks away from it. The senatorial candidates, for the most part, all of them are advancing to the general election. But in the congressional race, really the primary is on the Democrat side with former Congressman Robert Underwood entering into this fray with current Congressman Michael Sid Nicholas. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on this particular election, and who do you think will come out the victor?
The victor. The race to watch. Go ahead, Moneka, ladies first.
Oh, well, I have been a student of Dr. Underwood for a very long time, and just a big fan of his mind, and a big benefactor of a lot of the policies that he's put into place over time. Tomorrow Month was something that he started in the, I think, 70s, when he was just a teacher at George Washington High School. I'm not too for sure exactly what the history is, but he's done so much for our community, and I really think that he has been somebody that's credible and a real leader in every single position that he's held for our island. So I'm excited and happy that he's coming back into the fray of politics, even though he said he is a retired politician. I'm glad that he's wanting to pick up the helm, because he's seeing the need for, especially in this time, for someone to be and speak on behalf of the people of Guam in Washington in a way that's deemed credible. Unfortunately, Mike Nicholas does have a lot of controversy throughout his short first term. So I'm sure he did some good things, but yeah, definitely Mike Nicholas has been problematic the entire time. And so I feel like Dr. Underwood is somebody our community deems as trustworthy, and as someone who's always been accountable. So
right.
Do you think it's going to be a close
Dr.
race?
Underwood.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you guys think this is going to be a close race?
Close race. Is it going to be close between Robert and Mike St. Nicholas?
If you look at Facebook, probably, but I think most of Mike Nicholas's supporters are just on Facebook, like he's just on Facebook.
Double L?
Well, I'm not, I'm not as much of an election expert as single L Phill would be. But what I am seeing, which is very good for every single person on at least the Democratic side of the ballot for the primary election, is a lot of energy around the congressional race. And that's important because if you have 15 candidates on your senatorial race, there really is there's not a strong reason for people to rush to that particular ballot. So considering that we have contested mayoral races in a primary, considering that we have this contested and very, like I said, with a lot of energy surrounding it, congressional race, I think that's going to help show some strength, if anything, for the Democratic side of the ticket. And I actually think that the Republican candidate, Senator Will Castro, has a very tough job here, and that would be to sort of do whatever he can to get not only his base excited, but to be ready to capture the supporters of the losing Democratic candidate. Mm-hmm. And I would be more interested to see almost how that exercise turns out, because I think we can see right now how the primary election between the former delegate and the current delegate is going to look. And I think it's just going to be tit for tat the entire way for the next month or so.
But we're not really hearing anything out of Congressman St. Nicholas other than incessant Facebook posting. And that has been, I mean, I don't know, is that his strategy, you think? I'm just going to flood everyone's Facebook feed with, all this national news and take credit for it. And maybe hopefully I'll be able to win this primary election without even coming back to the island.
How do you really feel, Chris?
I think it's pretty clear how I feel. How do you feel, Single L?
I believe that they're supposed to have a forum with both my primo Robert and with St. Nicholas, Congressman St. Nicholas, with a chamber. That would be the last Wednesday of next month. But Robert spoke at our Rotary yesterday. He's got such passion. He also has charisma. He has that ability to say whatever he wants with a smile on his face. And, most of that crowded business professional people, but he wooed him. And I think he's got a good chance of beating Mike. Mike it's a generational race. Mike is relatively new when you compare it to how long Dr. Underwood served in office. But Mike is not here. He doesn't really reach out personally. I know several times I've sent messages to him, and not that you have to respond to me, but I expect you to respond to me because I'll respond to you. And it's ignored, and maybe a few days later, one of his staff will get in touch with me. That's okay.
Well, we know all too well about the not reaching out.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, that's right. I know.
Phil, Single L, let me ask you. This is
you're choosing the youth and the social media smartness of Mike San Nicolas or the wisdom and the still energized Robert Underwood. And we'll see what happens. To Moneka, a lot of people, he has a following on Facebook, but not enough. But nobody thought he was going to beat Madeline.
So let me ask you then, Phil, do you see a lot of Republicans, or how many Republicans are going to be voting in the Democratic primary?
So what we're worried about in the party right now, I'm not worried or concerned about. Oh, is that double L or single L?
Single L.
Single L.
We have to get for someone to advance on the senatorial ballot. That person has to get a certain percentage of the vote. I think it's 4%. I'm not quite sure. So there is concern, and there's an appeal to the base to please stay on the Republican side at least enough for Republican candidates all to be able to advance to the general election. But really, the fight is on the Democratic side, and I'm not going to go watch some guy's shadow box when I can go see Muhammad Ali and Ali Frazier.
Wow. Phil, Single L, and then I guess we'll just take it from there. The social media thing, right? You're a guy who's, you've pounded the pavement in God knows how many different elections, and, they've doubled down, tripled down on this social media thing. Like you said, nobody thought that Mike was going to beat Madeline. I mean, he had that social media following when he did that. He's got an even bigger one now. He's got whole outfits on social media that do all of his attacking and the trolling and stuff. That being said, do you think that those thousands of followers, those people who comment just nonstop on every single story that comes out about Mike San Nicolas, do you think that those people get off Facebook, get in their cars, and go and vote? Or do you think it's a lot of noise? I mean, how real is that support? Because social media, to me, a lot of times, what do we do on social media? I never post what I think is an ugly picture of myself. I'm trying to create the best reality that I want to promote out to people. And that's the problem I have with this is I feel like a lot of this support, it's virtual.
Well, it wasn't virtual 2 years ago.
Right.
They came out, and when I woke up on primary morning, Sunday morning around 4:35, used the restroom, and I said, I'm going to check out the returns. And so I turned it on, and Mike was ahead of Madeline. So I phoned him up. I said, are you going to win? He goes, yes. And he sounded like a 6-year-old going to this on Christmas morning. He was so excited, which was really fun. And then, of course, Doris, he beat Doris, who was also very, very experienced. And again, I think that part of it was generational. So yes, his following is real. I don't know how deep it is because it's the job of Washington and Guam to work together. And obviously we have been doing that. He's been very critical of the administration and the legislature and vice versa. So it could be that a lot of people in the Democratic Party are not going to go for Mike. I don't know. We'll see. Just 90 some days out, even that.
Moneka?
Also, Mike was running at a time where he wasn't being investigated. Madeline Bordalio seen more and more over the last few years of her reign as delegate to be more distant and more aloof from our community too. So it was just an opportune time for someone new to come in, and Mike San Nicolas at that time had a lot more support from our community.
You're right. It was kind of a perfect storm of, Madeline's people were busy promoting Amanda Shelton for senator. I think they wrote Mike off. And you're right. I mean, let's just be real. People talk about Madeline Bordalio like she's some kind of, I don't know. But I just feel like she was already washed up. She didn't have
Whoa.
any real competition for those last couple terms, and that's the reality of it. Mike just came in and cleaned house because she just didn't really stand a chance, and we know this because people in my generation, we just felt that, God, it was like a given that she was going to get elected to be the delegate. And I
And
think
he did really clean house. He only won by not his margin wasn't that big
Right.
against Madeline.
I just don't think that it was that much of an accomplishment. I mean, it sounds crazy, guys. I know Madeline Berdaille is a huge machine, but what we're seeing now politically is we've got new candidates, we've got new legacies, and a lot of people, there is a big part of the voting population who just wants to turn the page on the Madeline Berdailles, the Carl Gutierrez's, the Robert Underwoods. And I think that he was able to capitalize on it. Yeah.
I think the election 2 years ago and the election that we're having this year is very, very different. The last election that we had was all about change. And I do think that because there were so many guaranteed new senators, because we were guaranteed a new governor, because we were guaranteed a new attorney general, there was a lot of people that just took that feeling of, oh, now is the time to get new blood in there. And it translated all across, up and down the ballot. What I think is different this election, and I think that Phill touched on it really well, it's he is the incumbent now, and it's without a doubt he has a very huge following on social media. Anyone who has tried to criticize him and has had an article published on Facebook knows how strong his support is on social media. But I think the difference is that even voters that are part of the millennial generation, like me, Moneka, and the delegate himself, have this expectation that our local district has cultivated over the generations, and that is, I, as an individual voter, expect to have a one-on-one relationship with my candidate, with my congressman, with my senator. And when you're part of a 15-person body, you can spread that expectation out across your colleagues. But when you're the only delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, it becomes even clearer to people what level of access you're giving them. And something that I consistently hear about the congressman as a criticism of his time in office is that he's hard to get a hold of, even for people that he should be serving, like veterans. And so I do think that now he has the benefit and maybe the detriment of a year and a half of people and groups maybe not getting that one-on-one interaction that we all expect. And I would be interested to see how that affects his turnout in this election.
Single L.
Tomorrow's August. When's the last time he was here? Has he been here this calendar
February.
year?
February.
February. Okay, so only
We
6
wouldn't
months
know.
since. A long time.
Phill,
And
he hasn't been to Guam in so long that he posted a Facebook post and he was like, people keep asking how big my kids are. That's how long he's been away from Guam. So there you go. There's your answer.
There's also a feeling, not just our community, it's across the nation. People are not happy with their elected leaders, whether it be a governor or whether it be a president, whether it be a senator. Even on our planet, people are not happy because of COVID and several other things. And I think that works against incumbents for whatever office. And I was surprised when Robert talked yesterday at Rotary about, of course, the number of votes that Mike's missed, including the vote on the CARES Act. Hello, what? You're not there for the CARES Act? Where were you? And that's a question that we have to keep asking. Moneka mentioned about the controversy, the fact that now that his investigation has been gone on to a different committee, but with new charges, including interference with the investigation. That's a little scary.
That is.
Let's move on to the senatorial race. And granted, all of them are going to be moving forward, but I'm just kind of a little disappointed with. I thought we were going to see more candidates running.
More better candidates? I'll say it. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to hold my nose with the exception of about 1 to 2 people that I just, will always vote for because I support what they're doing. It's really thin. So I guess, guys, I know you guys are informed. You watch the news. You know who's on the ballot. Let's just start generally with the candidate quality for this COVID election. Moneka?
really interested in hearing from the new voices. I've been paying attention to your interviews. I definitely am interested in the new female candidate on the Republican side of the ballot, Sandra Sayal. I listened into her yesterday, and I think that she definitely needs a little bit more work in public speaking, which is totally fine for a new candidate to have to work on and expected as well. But I think that a lot of people are looking for people with brand new ideas and real concrete ideas, and not just people who want to complain about things and point things out that are wrong. So come to the I think people want to hear people with concrete, clear ideas and a vision for what they want to do with their time in office if they're elected. So I'm really excited for new candidates, and I'm also really grateful for the first-term senators for wanting to run again, and then also really saddened by the decision by Regine, by your boss, Phill, Leon Guerrero, to not run again, because I think that she's had, but I respect her decision, but she's done a lot of really wonderful things over the last her last few terms in office. So there's a lot to listen out for these new voices, and a lot more work for the new senators to do. And
Go ahead, Double L.
I want to say that I completely understand if people are looking around at the candidates and maybe they're not getting excited about it. But I'm very thankful that there are platforms like yours, Chris and Bree, that are investing the time and effort to educate our voters as to who these people are and what their plans are doing, because the guarantee for 2021 is that we are going to have at least 3 new senators. And by new senators, we could mean non-incumbent, because as I'm sure Phill will point out, there are very credible candidates on the Republican side of the ticket, if only because they've done the job before. But I do got to say, maybe as a criticism, because, this is my work professionally for over a decade now. But if I have a general tip for everyone who showed up to your interviews, it's please put a 15-minute marker on your phones and have it next to the screen, because the answers need to be tighter. You definitely aren't asking gotcha questions, guys. They're really basic. What do you want people to know about you? What are your plans are? And I was a little bit shocked that it took the prodding from you guys to former Senator Chris Duenas to actually, you had to name agencies to ask him if he'd be down to cut him, because he was evoking this notion that he's going to be the cutter, he's going to toe the line of spending. Yeah, the fiscal hawk. But really he wasn't proactive in saying what those cuts were going to be. So I think, people need to keep their answers tight. They need to be very direct in what they're saying. They need to recognize that if you come on KUAM, the bola is going to be called out and the specifics are going to be sought. So just time management is good, and make sure you do have good 30-second, 60-second, 90-second answers, because this might be the first and only time someone's going to pay attention to what you're bringing to the table. So you really want to make that impression strong.
Phill?
Single L?
No, single.
I could talk about this for hours, but I can't, right?
No.
But I'll go back to what Moneka said at the beginning. Don't just tell us problems, tell us solutions. And don't be afraid also, in my mind, to offend people. And if somebody's on, they're trying to be wishy-washy, bulla, because they're afraid of offending somebody. If your whole life is built around making everybody happy, then you're not going to be happy. You've got to take stands, I believe. As far as cutting government, we talk about government right now. They're talking about fiscal 21 and we have enough money. That's just baloney. We don't have enough money. We have enough welfare coming. But our tsunami years are fiscal 22 and 23. From all the companies now, all the people are not working, not paying taxes for in next year and the year after that. The government's broke and getting broker. And when you had Carlo on the other day and he challenged Tony had to say, well, which employees would you fire in the government? Whoa, we're not allowed to talk about breaking the spending downward spiral of the government. Well, I get rid of first the deputy directors, which we tried before and then we brought back. I closed some of those agencies like a Gagnon Restoration that were closed before and working with another agency, so you don't have to pay another director and a deputy director. Ridiculous salaries that some of these people are making, $180,000. I know what somebody making $180,000 is worth, who that person is. And the people I see in the government want to make 130, 150, 160, 180. They're not worth it. They're not worth six figures. They're good, they're nice, but they're not worth that much money. So we're spending way too much money, and also attrition. You don't, just because somebody retires or resigns, whatever, you don't necessarily have to fill that position, but just leave it alone. And finally, there are ways to cut government waste besides getting rid of employees. We all know that. We see it every day. But as far as this election and the senators, again, there's a lot of people who are not happy, and we do have the 3 seats that are going to be open. But I would expect that some of the senators are going to be defeated, incumbents are going to be defeated. I mean, why are we talking about double pay for government employees when 30,000 people are lined up for food? Why are we worrying about hiking rules and swimming rules and people don't have work? I mean, that's why I think frustrates a lot of people. And as far as equality, it's not as sexy to be a senator as it used to be. And also, if you're really smart and you want to do things, if you're in a room with 15 other people and you've got to convince them, well, they may not be as smart as you on that particular topic. They may not be as motivated as you. So it's sometimes very, very hard to get something done.
Phill, I think I just want you to come out and say it. When you talk about several incumbents you think are going to lose their seats, I know you're implying that one of those you believe is Senator Kelly Marsh-Titano, because she did the hiking trail thing. What other incumbents do you think are in danger of losing their seats in this election?
Well, that's difficult for me to say, and I'm not saying Kelly's going to lose, but I do know there's a lot of criticism of Kelly,
right?
Sabrina, Tilina, Amanda.
I don't know. For me, I do feel like government does have a role in ensuring the safety of our community, especially given that lots of people don't have jobs. More people are going hiking, more people are swimming, and we have seen loss of life just in the month of July from people hiking and swimming. And it really is a part of our government to ensure the safety of our visitors and our community when we go out and enjoy nature, and we go out to, especially because those things don't cost money. We are going to need to be putting in safety parameters and ways to ensure that people are safe when they're going out into our island. So I don't think that was a willy-nilly legislation. Definitely maybe not the most fiscally one of the things that are about the economy right now, but definitely not something that should be overlooked or said to be a waste of somebody's time or taxpayers' money. I've spent
decades and decades and decades of hiking and going through the jungle. And when we used to go to Talapopo Falls, we'd actually pull ourselves on a raft across the river. I'm still here.
But there's not a lot of intergenerational discussion on that either. So if those things aren't happening within families, and if that sort of knowledge isn't being passed down, there is going to be some need for the government or some sort of, especially parks or somebody, to come in and maybe just offer those suggestions. We already do it with the riptides around the ocean, and just the ocean health. Those things are already in place. So just adding a little bit more isn't going to hurt.
So you're going to vote for her, but I'm not. So that's okay.
Well, I think that this is an example again of that criticism that's levied against the anti-military buildup activists and the Guam legislature. Is this notion that you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. There were other bills that were handled at that session, bills that were talking about really critical issues, and throughout this pandemic, there have been bills that have been talking about critical issues. I worked very hard alongside my Senator Regine Bisco-Lee to try and find some economic relief, whether it was locally funded or trying to help the administration through the federal government. But I think the civics lesson really is that in an emergency response, the role of the legislature is really limited. But one thing that the legislature can always do is handle the money. And that's what I want to sort of pivot back to here, because a lot of the Republican senatorial candidates, I think, are going to press this issue about the BPT. I'm glad that when Senator Jim Moylan was on with you guys, that you asked him about this effort, because while Phill mentioned that you can cut government spending and not touch employees. You can look at deputy directors. You can look at consolidating agencies at like HRRA. If we lower the BPT to 5%, that's a $60 million spending cut. And I know that there are a lot of people that would welcome that news of the government of Guam spending $60 million less. But I can tell everyone that's listening right now that there is no way to accomplish that cut without having some sort of a negative effect, including personnel cuts to DOE, to DPHSS, to GPD, because those are our largest agencies. If we are going to cut that much in government spending, no one is going to be immune to it, not public safety, not public health, not public education. And that's why it's important for the people that are advocating so strongly for these spending cuts to be very specific about how this is going to affect our schools, how it's going to affect our police officers and our public safety, how it's going to affect the delivery of public health services, because they have to accept that fact. And I think that despite people like Senator Moylan floating this notion as early as the very first month of this term, when it comes time to take up the mantle and really walk the walk, Senator Moylan blinked. And I know that he has reasons for it and said, well, if you could set this bill aside, why couldn't you set my bill aside? But we're a year and a half into a term. If you don't know how you're going to do a $60 million cut by now, it's probably because you haven't been working that hard to cut $60 million in the budget.
I agree. And maybe I'll surprise you, but I don't think we should go from 5 to 4. I mean, now I'm going to get a bunch of phone calls. I think legislation was done to bump up the Dave Sanchez dollar amounts, but we've got a dozen companies, and they can afford the 5%. The smaller companies that are working to survive, yeah, they can have the relief down to 4 or whatever it is, but otherwise, I don't care about 5% or 4% in the long run. But as far as Phill is cutting expenses, and as a result, services will falter. I don't find that on the private side. We are always looking for ways to improve service, to offer new products, and to reduce cost, and we're able to do both of them, all three of them. So just because you're going to cut government spending doesn't mean the government's going to fall apart. Everybody can do everything better, including me.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that with the $60 million cut, you would have to doing it better with fewer teachers, fewer police officers, and perhaps fewer nurses. But I'm glad that you mentioned. I'm glad that you mentioned the cut too, because the cut from 5 to 4% wouldn't even be that much for businesses. I mean, to even save $10,000, you would have to making gross sales of $1 million a year for that kind of a change. And if you have to make $1 million in order to save 10,000, this BPT cut isn't going to magically rehire people. This BPT cut isn't going to magically have branches that have shut reopen. It really is going to be marginal. Yes, our businesses could use relief, but I just wanted to make sure that we're recognizing the dollars and cents, the cold numbers here, because people talk about this being a silver bullet for the economy, the silver bullet for our government to try and make it more accountable to us. And I just think that it falls very, very short for what we're going to be giving up here.
But it's going to happen. Whether you cut from Moneka, I'm not trying to take you out of this, but it's going to happen, Double L, because gross receipts taxes or business privilege tax, it's a percentage of revenues that businesses receive. And that percentage of revenues is going to be a lot more than 20% less going forward in the next couple of fiscal years. So there's your 60 million.
All right, guys. Last thoughts. Let's go ahead and go round robin, and we'll close out the after party here, and we'll start again with you, Moneka. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a great hour. What are your last thoughts on the conversation that we've had?
Decision 2020.
Right.
I'm definitely really grateful to be a part of these conversations. I do want to learn more about what are Phill Single L's ideas about diversifying the economy and ways that we can move forward in regards to agriculture, a circular economy, and being a little bit more robust in our economy and not being so dependent on the military and tourism and and other ideas. Maybe next time.
Cool LG.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on. You know, I think that it's really important when we're having an election, when we're doing this exercise to choose our next leaders, that our people are really informed about as many different perspectives as possible, as many different, as much information that can be given. So please continue to listen to the interviews with the candidates. Please, when there are opportunities like this for people with different perspectives to talk about these issues, continuously take advantage of that opportunity, because it's something that's really beautiful about the community we live in, that we can have these discussions out in the open.
And 1L.
I love my island. I love my community. Moneka, I'd like to talk to you if we could. I don't know if you need corporate sponsors, but we'd be happy to help you out.
Wait, we gotta get a cut, guys.
This is the link.
Yeah.
Linking them up.
Linking you guys together.
I'm in a good mood because as soon as I get off of this, I'm going into another Zoom with Winston Marsalis, where he's going to play playing some music and talking about himself. It's really going to be very cool.
Wow.
But I will say this too, just to our community, the community that we all love, let us be a little bit more positive. We can be. You pick up the paper and they say there's 351 cases now. Actually, there's only 49 cases now when you take out the people who have recovered. And I wish that we'd stress more, not so much that we have a new case. I don't should be more that we have very few cases and move on from there. So anyway, thanks you guys. Nice to talk to you, Moneka, Double L, and KUM. Oh, KUM, I like your new Breeze format.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be having you guys on the show another time.
Yes, definitely. We do it every Friday. Decision 2020 with KUAM News. That was the after party. That was a lot of fun. Hey, guys, thank you so much for your support. This is just